Hello, welcome to another episode of Project GaitWay. This is Laura that we have with us today. Don't know where Laura is from, but looks like we have her in her garage gym. So Laura has a bit of left SI joint pain, a bit of right knee pain, and occasionally both heels hurt when she's standing on flat surfaces for long periods of time. So just so you know, here, and here are the spots of interest. Not sure which part of her right knee, but regardless, something in the right knee. Now, as per usual with these videos, I don't know anything about Laura's history. All I know is that those are a few spots in her body that are niggling at her. And what we're going to do is look at her static posture, look at her gait mechanics, and I am going to see if it feels like I can make some guesses about in her injury history, what led her body to be moving and feeling the way that it does now. And along the way, hopefully we get to improve our movement observation skills, one of our best assets as practitioners and therapists, or as general nerds. So let's take a look first at how Laura is standing. So this is in our video. She's just standing here. Okay, perfect. So let's see what jumps out. First thing that jumps out to me is the position of her right leg. Her femur on the right looks a little more internally rotated. This is of interest because she does have some complaints around her right knee. And as we know, the leg bone, the femur, is the top bone of the knee joint. So anything that femur is doing is going to be shown in how her knee is and moves. I have the sense that this knee is also more extended. So more internally rotated in the femur and more extended. And I'm seeing that extension because it looks like this back of her right knee is pushed backwards a little farther. It looks a little flatter, whereas this one, it looks more like it's got a bend in it, for lack of a better word. However, her left knee looks like it's on a bit of this inwards slant, which we refer to sometimes as a valgus angle. And that also seems to track with, I don't know if that seems to track with her, I was going to say her left heel looking more rolled inwards. I don't know actually if it is. Because there is also what looks like a bit of space under the outside of her right heel. Generally more space under the right heel. I'm not sure if that's just the shadows or if that's really space under her heel. Because if you just look at the shadowing of her foot, it looks like there is more shadow along that whole outside and back of her heel and foot. Now, what's up with that valgus angle, though, in that left tibia? Is that to do with something happening above? Or is that just something that is going on with her knee locally? Or am I completely delusional? The longer I look at it, the more delusional I feel. So time to move on in that case. That's a rule I'm working with for myself in my own process, is if I get sucked into it to the point where I'm questioning myself, time to move on, come back to it later. I am kind of feeling like her pelvis is higher on the right. Not completely sure about that, but I have that sense of it. I'm trying to see if it looks like one of her feet, one of her, or if it looks like her pelvis is shifted over to one foot more than the other. And if I had to choose a side, I want to say she's shifted more to the right. But I'm not 100% certain about that. We're going to move to a different angle before I get lost in my mind. Thank you, Laura, for spending a lot of time in each of these angles. Really helpful, not to just have a quick 1 second. Okay. From a side view, what strikes me is her rib cage really shifted backwards looking. I don't feel like she's pushed forwards with her pelvis so much. It kind of looks like her pelvis is over the middle of her feet, but more so it looks like her whole rib cage shifted backwards through space, which is causing this extension in the lumbars and a flexion in her thoracics, which isn't a bad thing. Like, that's the natural shape of a spine. But I think hers might be a little more exaggerated than it needs to be for her to be comfortable. What else do we see from the side view? Whenever I'm unsure about one leg being more rotated in or rotated out or more bent or went straight through the knee, I like to use the side view for that. So take note of how much of her kneecap you can see here and how the contour of the back of her knee looks in terms of being straight or bent. And generally, you can also look at if the tibia looks like it's a straight line with the top and the bottom in a vertical line, top of the tibia over the heel, as opposed to being like that, like that. So if we go to her other side view, come to your front view next. Let's see your right side. So if you recall, we can go back to it again, but less of her knee is visible from this side, which confirms to me that we have some internal rotation in that right femur. And it almost looks to me like she has the same kind of angle in her tibia, but the angle of her thigh relative to her tibia, it looks like there's more of this extension in her knee here. So more of a droop, droop. Oops, that was bad. I'm going to exaggerate it. More of that kind of angle. So that would give us a extension of the knee. Go back to the other side. I just want to see that again. Well, it's tough to say actually if the extension is greater, but for sure the knee is more visible from this side. Quickly make a mental note about what her foot looks like here. How much does it look like her outside of her foot is in contact with the ground compared with her other side? So we're looking for if one foot looks more rolled in or more rolled out. Well, it's definitely different. I think this side looks like it's more everted. There's just a little look of more space under the outside of her foot there. So it's as if this whole leg, we could say, is a bit more of a pronated shape going with it. I want to go back to that side view again, because there's something also that was different about how her feet looks. It's this tendon there. Now, I don't know which is that. Is that peroneus longus? Someone please confirm that with me, if what we're seeing there is peroneus longus popping out. Peroneus longus is an interesting muscle because it actually, well, I don't know if I want to get to muscles too much here. That is a deep dive that is best spent for its own time. If it comes up, it comes up. But do you see how on this side that if it's peroneus longus, whatever it is, or fibularis longus, it's not prominent on this side. Either it's underdeveloped or the other side's overdeveloped. something. Now, the thing is, I have to say something about this. With a foot that's more everted, should I talk about? No, I don't think I'm even clear enough in my thoughts about what's happening here to go into a FHL discussion. Or sorry, not FHL, peroneus longus, fibularis longus. I'm not ready to get into that conversation now. Whoops, don't want to see you walk yet. Go back. All right, one last thing with her feet. Just note how much arch is under her left foot that you can see. Oops, wrong way. And then we're going to go back to her right side view. And does that look the same, the amount of arch under her foot there? It kind of looks similar. Okay, let's go to this front view. Very interesting looking at her kneecaps. Because this right one does look like it's a bit pushed back more and the muscles are more pulled up in her quads, which is showing us more extension. However, it's more clear, this valgus angle on the left side. So definitely a little bit of that kind of angle going on. So for me, like just on first glance, I would guess this knee is the more painful one, but actually it's not. It's the right one that is causing her more owie. And I wonder if this valgus knee we're seeing is a result of her putting more weight, center of mass shifted to the right, which would kind of drag her shin bone that way. And maybe the pain that she's getting in her right knee is related to that internal rotation of the femur and the foot being more everted and the knee being more extended, which is a weird orientation for things to be in. But then she's also standing with all her weight on it, or a lot of her weight on it. So we really shouldn't see a femur with that internal rotation coupled with an extended knee on top of an everted foot. But it doesn't really look like her foot's that everted from the front view. In fact, it looks, it kind of looks like this left foot is more everted. And there's a bit more of this bunion-y thing happening on her big toe there. So it's not that one of her feet looks more pronated or more supinated than the other. They just look very different. And neither one I could say is pronated or supinated. We'll see what that looks like as she is walking. Now, she also said she had some left SI joint pain. And occasionally both heels were painful. Now, I wonder what is up with her left SI joint that she's noticing some stuff there. I do have a bit of a sense that there could be a rotation in her spine. Let's look at a side view and see if that gives us any clues. Does it look like her spine is rotated right or left? Let me go to the other side view. It looks like she's rotated to the right with her spine. More of her looks hidden from this right side view, or left side view rather. With I'm just looking at this tendon here sticking out again, and I'm wondering how that could be correlated with the valgus angle in her left tibia. Now, in terms of her having more weight in or more pressure or pain in her heels, with this posture, with her rib cage back like that, I would suspect she has more weight in her heels just in her stance. So I wonder what her spinal mobility is like, if she's actually able to extend well through her thoracic spine, flex well through her lumbars, and I wonder how well she can move her pelvis into an anterior and posterior tilt. So essentially, I'm interested in the cogs of her entire spine, and if she can get her weight out of her heels just by accessing better spinal motion, evenly distributed. Okay. Anything else we want to look at here in the posture? Both arms look a little internally rotated, but especially on the left arm. Let's see if she goes into a walk from here. Pause there. Oh wait, yeah, we'll just go. We'll go. What do we see standing out immediately? Don't trip on that chain, that pile of chains. I do have the sense of her shifting more into her right foot. But interestingly, yeah, there's this big right ribcage rotation that almost looks like a shift with her ribcage to the left. Let's see that again. What are we seeing? You see when she swings her right leg forward, I can't tell if she's shifting her ribcage or rotating her ribcage to the right. I think it's a ribcage rotation to the right, but it's the fact that I'm not clear about it. Something's happening for sure. It's like there's a real torque going through her spine when she's getting her right leg forward. Let's watch that walking bit again. I have the sense that her pelvis only rotates to the left. She only rotates pelvis left, rib cage right. That sort of transverse plane organization will make it easier for her to get her right leg forward when she's walking, which to me makes me wonder about, yeah, is she really spending a lot of time moving her weight into her right foot? Let's look at her feet. I don't think she pronates as well on the right foot. Well, like I said, I don't think either of her feet really pronate super well because they're two very different feet that probably are doing two very different non-pronatey things. Let's see what's actually happening here. So we're going to slow it down, take a few steps. Whoops. Oh no. Where'd she go? There. Boop. Okay, so we'll go 1 and 2. And here we are in early swing on the left. We'll get her where her feet are side by side. Okay. What's that right foot looking like? Well, it's interesting. We don't have a super clear view quality of the screen and all, but we do see like this shadowing under the outside of her foot and also there on the inside of her heel. That's a very weird way of having a foot on the ground. Yeah, and I think that shadowing is actually showing us what's happening because we can see it change as she swings her left leg a little farther forward. You can see that shadowing on the lateral border get darker and the shadowing under her heel get darker, which is showing us her foot is going deeper into pronation as her left leg swings forward more. That's the opposite of what we want it to do. We want to see her left, or rather her right foot starting to, oops, that says sur. Sup. Supination is what we want. Does your brain ever do this where you're thinking of the word ahead of you as you're writing down the word that was behind you, and then you end up with a weird word? That just happened. So no bueno with what that foot's doing. It's pronating a little bit too much at the wrong time. So we're back here in our mid stance. You can see the internal rotation of this right femur. But she looks pretty level pelvis. I mean, it looks like her left shoulder is maybe a titch lower than her right shoulder. But overall, she doesn't look like a ball of chaos like I do when I'm in my right mid stance. I'm not sure if the video I did of myself is published yet, but if it is, it's a disaster. Going into her left heel strike. First moment of contact with the heel on the ground on the left leg. So we're going to say it's right there. She looks, again, pretty level. Pelvis is pretty level. Shoulders are, whoops, see. Shoulders are pretty level. Nary a flexion right or left in her spine that I can tell. So again, it's hard to say what is of interest without comparing to the other side. It's pretty quiet looking so far. She does seem to be more or less on the lateral part of her heel on the ground. So that's pretty good so far. However, we do see traces of this valgus angle. So we'll put her into her left foot, starting to pronate, pronating, pronated, right about there. We're getting a hike in her pelvis on the left. That's great. That's what we want to see. Her tibia actually looks pretty vertically stacked up right now. So I was expecting it to look a lot more valgus. So that's good. Get a sense of how much of her pelvis looks like it's lined up over her left foot, if she's actually weight bearing into it, center of mass going over to the left foot. I have the feeling right now, or it's looking to me right now, that her rib cage is not rotating left. She looks like she's pointing her whole body towards the right. So not much rotation in her spine. If you look at her back leg as well, there's a flexion in the knee, losing contact with the ball of the foot. So not a very cleanly supinating leg. So really, in my mind, in this particular phase, it looks like there's more challenges with her spine not rotating and with her back leg not supinating. Now that back leg is going to be really hard to supinate unless her femur is able to externally rotate a little bit. If it's stuck internally rotated, it's going to be really challenging to find that rigid lever through the leg. She's not going to be able to supinate the foot. She's not going to be able to extend the knee or extend the hip if she's stuck in internal rotation in her thigh. Let's see what happens. We go along through This is kind of what I was wondering would happen. Do you see how she gets pulled deeper into this valgus in her left tibia as she goes from pronation to mid-stance? She gets pulled more into valgus. And I wonder if that's actually her body getting over to the right and pulling her leg with her on that kind of angle. In theory, if we were going to see a valgus angle in her knee, it would be here in this phase, but it is not. It happens more so here. Kind of when she's getting into early late swing. If you want to break it into another additional interphase. I'm thinking about her left side, her SI joint here. So we're going to have to compare how much she hikes on the right side and what her spine is doing rotation-wise and her pelvis is doing rotation-wise on the other side. To understand more what's happening on her SI joint here that isn't happening or is happening differently on her right side. So let's take her. And it just looks like a lot of movement right here, like too much busyness through there as she's doing this transition from mid stance to early late swing to mid late swing to late swing. Does it look like she shifts her pelvis to the right? What's happening is, that was a bad sentence. To me, what it looks like is happening is there's this little moment here where she's in her right heel strike and she's kind of pushing off that back foot and the left side of her pelvis is hiking up. You see that? There's this little moment of hike up the left side of her pelvis. So that hike of the pelvis is going to result in a bit of a compression or a closure or more force in that SI joint. Dropping it would decompress it. We also see quite a bit of that rotation through her spine happening here. This moment, it just looks like there's a lot going on. You see her pelvis rotating to the left and her spine rotating to the right. Like it looks just really busy in there. Plus that little additional boop up with her pelvis on the left. I could see why that area might not feel great, but it just as well could be that side. And let's see what happens now when her right foot pronates. And I gotta say, it looks like her right foot pronated a lot more quickly, like more of a slap down on the ground. We're seeing a bit more of a turned out foot on the right. And we do see some hike on the right side of the pelvis, but is it the same as on the left side? I think we need to go back and look. It's a lot more hike on the left side. I think it's a lot more hike on the left side than the right side. I don't know if I was expecting that. Hmm. This is interesting as well. I didn't see that the first time through, but do you see this shifty thing? Where her rib cage shifts to the right a little bit. There. And then the way that she kind of leans her body to the left here. Doesn't look super comfortable. Something ain't right. Something is not very efficient about how she's loading into her left leg. Now, when I was watching from the full speed video, I had the sense that her pelvis was more rotated to the left throughout, but actually I think it's more rotated to the right. Because look at here, the sense of her right side of her pelvis being backwards farther towards us, which would be a rotation to the right. And then in her right foot forwards, it looks like both sides of her pelvis are pretty level in regards to one being more closer or farther from us in the transverse plane rotation. So I don't know if her pelvis rotates to the left at all. Does it? Because it looks right now that it's not rotating left, which would give us quite a bit of internal rotation in this right hip right now. So what I want you to note about this little shifty thing in her rib cage here is that shift to the side, often that can pull into the SI joint and create a little bit of tension there. If you shift your rib cage away from the left side of your pelvis, so shifting your rib cage to the right, you might get this feeling of, oh, something is tugging through the structures of my SI joint, through the thoracolumbar fascia into that area. Just it might be pulling a little bit. So it almost looks like the way that she's trying to swing her left leg forward, she's doing it. Oh, uh-oh, my scroller is lagging on me. It's like she's doing it. She's doing that shearing with her rib cage to the side as she swings her left leg forward. I'm starting to wonder if anything happened to this leg. Did you hurt that knee, have an accident, sprained your ankle, fell on that knee, something like that? And just the way she kind of twists out of this leg. So it doesn't look like her weight is really fully on her left leg. It looks like she's twisting her pelvis to the right quite a bit. And she twists her spine and rib cage to the right pretty quickly, like she doesn't want to commit to that leg. Part of committing to that leg in a fully weight-bearing phase would be actually to have her rib cage rotating to the left. We want to see her rib cage rotating to the left when she's standing on her left leg here, but she is not. She's twisting out of it pretty quickly. It looks like she isn't really getting her pelvis to shift to the right, but her leg is leaning inwards. That is interesting. That valgus in her leg. Heel strike here. Notice how her body, her rib cage does look quite rotated to the right. But as does her pelvis. Her pelvis isn't counter rotating to the left. Not happening. So there is a lot of weird stuff going on as she gets her left leg forward. So I can kind of see why that might be an uncomfortable situation for that SI joint on the left side. So why is that knee not feeling super comfortable? Well, it looks like that foot pronates pretty quickly, and we know that femur is more internally rotated. So those mechanics just might be happening too much and too fast at the right time. This is the phase where we would like to see her foot pronating and her leg internally rotating, but it's looking like it's just an excessive amount for her and not enough of her pelvis rotating to the left. And here we are back at the beginning. Let's watch from a front view. You see here as well how her whole body just wants to twist to the right. So another thing to consider about the left SI joint is when we have the pelvis rotating to the right, it is going to, in the transverse plane, compress that left side SI joint. So there's a few things happening that might be pushing and pulling in that SI. It does seem to be just generally quite a bit of movement in around her lumbar spine, which makes me wonder, she does have a lot of like a look of a flexion in her thoracics. I wonder if she is able to actually extend in her thoracics, and if she could extend more ideally through her thoracics, would that chill out how much her lower back is moving? It looks like the busiest body part as she's walking. Okay, let's take a look-see here. Mid stance on the left, early swing on the right. You can see her body starting to rotate to the right. Notice if her pelvis is rotating. So when her right leg swings forward, we'd like to see her pelvis rotating left. Don't think it does very much compared to her left leg forward. Well, this is weird because it looks different from the back view and the front view. I wonder if it's an illusion because of her shorts not being entirely centered. Because from the front view, it actually looks like her pelvis is now rotating better to the left. So I am seeing two different things from a front view and a back view. That is confusing. What do you think is going on here? Am I missing something? I'm pretty sure Margie Verba would provide some useful insight here. Are we seeing a little bit of a torsion of some kind in her pelvis, which is not something I feel confident to say without getting my hands on and palpating. But anyway, let's kind of zoom out from the pelvis and see what is a little bit more easy to see. So we're just going to get her foot down to where it looks like it's pronated. There. And let's compare that to this side. That's an interesting angle of her leg, isn't it? That's that weird moment we were seeing. Like right here, her whole body moves as one piece to her right, as a rotation to the right. And look at that interesting internal rotation through her leg there. You really see that valgus angle stand out. Now, if you just took this moment and imagined what would put a body in a position like this, to me, it looks like there's this really, really heavy wind, strong wind blowing her to the right. So I almost want to guess there could have been an impact to the side here. I don't know, speculation, pure speculation. But it really does look like she's getting blown over to the right at this moment when her body ought to be committing into her left leg. Oh, could it be she was just turning around? That always happens. Okay. Never take the last step before the camera, before they turn around. That will screw you up. I did that again on another video. I was like, oh my God, why is their leg turning inward so much? Oh, they're just turning around. Let's take a different step. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when I do it real time and don't try to sound smart in advance. So we'll take it from where we left off there. There still is the sense of this angle and being more over to the right. I do see like more of a weight transfer into her right foot here. She just looks like she's more confidently standing on that right leg. Her knee looks a little more flexed there. Looks a little more organized in her pelvis. Spine is rotating to the right like it needs to be. But here, a little less organized. Her knee isn't quite flexing yet. It does take quite a while for her toes to get onto the ground fully. So a slower time pronating on this leg, whereas it was a bit faster on her right leg, the pronation. Knee isn't flexing. I already said that. Remember this angle of her pelvis, the hike on the left. It's tough to say which side actually is hiking more. Maybe it's the right. But what I'm really interested in right now is just how different her pelvis looked from the back and the front. So I really want to know if there's some kind of torsion where she maybe has her sacrum stuck in a rotation in one direction. And the innominate is different. I don't know. I would want to get my hands on. Oops, that's the screwy step where she's turning around. Okay. So I guess a few things I get really stuck into this idea that I want to understand someone's entire life story. And I don't think that is the goal that I should have. Maybe just point out a few things that I would want to further investigate. So for me, sagittal plane spine motion. So I am very interested in if she can flex and extend her thoracics, if she can anterior tilt, posterior tilt her pelvis. How well can she do that in a cogs context? So with opposition between the structures, stacked up with gravity. Thing two I'm curious about is this knee on the left. I know her right knee is the one that's uncomfortable, but it looks like that angle in her knee is a bit of a handbrake. She's not really bending this knee. She doesn't look like she is super confident standing on that left leg compared to how she gets her weight into her right leg. So I think I'd want a little bit more of an assessment of what's happening in this knee. And if she's not really, whoops, if she's not like when her knee straightens in, it goes into this valgus. That's not what we should see happening. And when she lands on her foot and the knee doesn't flex, it's not absorbing shock very well. So could we be seeing a bit more of that force showing up in her SI joint? Not feeling happy, not enough actual deceleration of the motion in her knee happening to cushion that entire leg pronating. I'm also curious about if her spine can actually rotate to the left. So it's possible that there could have been some kind of issue with either one of her shoulders that is skewing her to only be able to rotate to the right. For example, if she, like this left shoulder does look more internally rotated, it does look like maybe slightly lower than the other one. This is so funny because she looks very different from the back view and the front view. And I don't know which view to believe. It's like you got two personalities. Yeah. Other thing I'm really curious about is this pelvis. Why does it look different back and front? Is that just me or is that you? I would love to hear if there's been any kind of discombobulation you're aware of with your pelvis and your hips. I don't know anything about Laura's history. So hard to speculate. But I do wonder if there's been something that happened on that left leg. Because it just looks like it's not as confident. She wants to get out of it as fast as possible. The left knee does not look like it's set up well to absorb shock. We know that if her rib cage were to rotate to the left, we'd need her left shoulder, GH joint. We'd need that to be able to externally rotate. I wonder if she has the ability to externally rotate her left arm, if anything ever happened to that arm. Could say the same thing about her right arm. Just looking at her arms now as the last little thing to investigate. This is where we'd want to see her arms fully, or that reaching, approaching end range fully. And then full end range. She gets more swing with her arms to the right. So that's kind of synced up with her spine. A spine that's rotating to the right. You would want to see more flexion in the left arm, more extension in the right arm. So this is happening. So good. Not as much clean arm swing here. And in fact, we get a bit of a abduction in the left arm. So I am a little curious about that left arm and shoulder. Anything happened there that's making it not as easy to rotate her spine to the left because that shoulder is not extending back like it ought to. Okay, so those are my things I'm curious about. Laura, this was very interesting. Your pelvis is fascinating. Has anyone ever said that to you? Okay, I'm gonna wrap up there before I go crazy thinking about your hips. Please fill us in on anything. Your history would be great to hear. What actually happened to this body of yours. A timeline would be great to hear. Anyone who's watching, feel free to put your comments, questions, observations. Tell me what you see that I don't see so that I can learn to see things differently and learn from this experience to a deeper degree. Thanks for tuning in, and I will be back with another episode of Project GaitWay probably next week. Have an awesome day.